Good evening, Moonprincess here, and tonight we are going to talk about Annabella Wright and her mysterious murder, also known as the Green Bicycle Killer, a case which has been characterized by some as a real-life Sherlock Holmes whodunit mystery, though in my mind it's not that much of a whodunit, but I digress. You can make your own opinion on that matter. So let's get into it. So, Annabella Wright was a 21-year-old African-American woman born July 4th, 1897. She passed away July 5th, 1919. She was born in Somersby, Lancaster. She worked in a rubber factory. So this is obviously a case from the UK. More than 100 years ago, and it remains unsolved. So she grew up the daughter of an agricultural laborer and his wife. She attended school until she was 12, before she began work as a maid, which helped her provide for her family. Bella was looked upon favorably by those in her community, described as a good girl, one with moral character. So she lived in the village Little Tritton, located in the countryside. So she had worked as a maid for some time and then decided to make a change. During World War I, new opportunities came up, hence the factory position. So yeah, Bella was a young woman growing up right before the 1920s. At the start of World War I, she would bike 5 miles to her job at a rubber factory in Lancaster, working for Bates and Co's St. Mary's Mills. Bella came home Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. and slept until 4 p.m. She wrote correspondence to her boyfriend / fiance, a sailor in the Royal Navy by the name of Archie Ward. The two were planning to marry at some point, or so they say, I'm assuming. Though apparently her mother mentioned an army officer showing interest in her as well, but she was already engaged, so. Her boyfriend was stationed on HMS Diadem in Portsmouth. Before heading out, Bella said goodbye to her mother. Then at 4:30 p.m. Bella rode her bike to the post office. A neighbor offered to deliver that for her, and so she was able to speed things up and visit her cousin more quickly to see the new baby directly. Visiting them in her uncle's home, Uncle George Measures, located at Galby. The night of her murder, she was on her way to visit her uncle, who lived only a few miles from her. But her bike had some sort of malfunction occur, which led to one of her wheels becoming loose. One source claimed it was a malfunction of the flywheel of her bike. So now the stranger danger comes into play here. As this occurred, a man on a distinct green bike appears with equally distinct handlebars. He offered his assistance, telling her that we did not have the correct tool to fix the loose wheel. He could offer his assistance to travel to her uncle. He told her he could help her to her uncle's home and then help fix the tire afterwards. And so she led him to the residence, and he waited outside until it was time for Annie to head home. When asked about the man, her uncle described him as an unnerving man. He did not like light, just hanging out by his house waiting for Bella. He was also worried, since Bella was already engaged to someone else, and it does not look good for her to be alone with a man. I mean, truth. Some sources describe the man on the green bike as having an unshaven face and a squeaky voice, that he was male referred to Bella by her first name. Despite being strangers, this is very... No, you do not do that. That is taking liberties right there. Though Bella told her uncle that her companion was not really bothering her, she may have been saying this to reassure him. From one of the accounts I read, Bella initially put off going home, hoping Light would leave, and at first thought that he had. She felt more relaxed, but then he popped out of nowhere, peering from nearby to ride back with her, saying to her, "Bella, you've been a long time. I thought you had gone the other way." Before departing, Bella's cousin had her husband chat with him about his bike and the strangeness of its back wheel. So then they rode off together. When Annie was ready to head home, Annie Bella. But by 8:50, when she was expected to arrive home, nothing. They left, going up Galby Lane. She crested the upcoming hill, and it was the last her family would ever see her alive, until 9:20, when in a country lane, her remains were discovered by a nearby farmer named Joseph Cowell. Only 30 minutes after she left her family. It was also strange that they found her on Gartree Road, which was not part of the normal route she would take to get home. It would have taken her longer to get back. This could be perhaps she was trying to lose Light, or he had convinced her to go a different way. It would make sense for her to go a different way if she did not want him to follow her home and know where she lives. Makes sense to me. She was found near a gate, still on her bike, though overturned, with blood on her face. At first glance, officers assumed her death was a tragic accident, that she likely fell from her bike and in the fall hit her head, attributing this to her death. This is also because there were no footprints and they saw no indication someone else had been with her at the time. Her body was relocated to an unoccupied cottage to be dealt with the following day. Her remains lay on the kitchen floor of an abandoned building until her body could be handed over to her family. So this is when Alfred Hall comes into play. Constable Alfred Hall decided to take another look at the scene, finding a bullet that had previously gone unnoticed. It was hidden beneath a layer of topsoil. Then he noted at the morgue that there was a gunshot wound on the left side of her head. According to one source, there was a bullet hole beneath her left eye, marring her beautiful face, and from beneath the back of her straw hat, blood pooled from where the bullet exited her skull. Turning this case, its cause of death, rolling from an accident to a homicide. Sources described claw marks of a crow who was found dead in a field close by, that had tried to gorge on her blood, as described by Soap Moxie, I think that's the name. A macabre scene indeed. Bloody prints and all. Bella was shot in the face from 2 meters away, the bullet leaving her skull at the back. Police theorized the events leading up to the murder occurred as such that at some point on the ride home from her uncle's, something prompted her to run from the man. In an effort to stay safe, she chose a more narrow road, but her pursuer preempted her efforts and cut her off from the other direction. That this took place at the farm's gate, hence why her body was where they located it, and the farmer the one to report her remains to the police. After cutting her off, he shot her and departed. Authorities put together a poster seeking to apprehend him. They knew his height was average, his hair dark, age ranging from 30 to 40, and they could identify his bike if they were to come across it. Nothing happened for months, but by February 23rd, 1920, the Enoch White House barge got caught on something found at the end of the canal, which turned out to be the green bike. They dredged the canal and found the split up parts of the bike. They also found the bullets used to kill Bella in Lake Gloucestershire River. His bike handlebars were found. Then, later, the rest of the bike was discovered. While he did file the serial numbers down, he was unable to make it impossible to determine, and they were able to track the serial number back to Light purchasing the bike. Witnesses claimed prior to discovery of the bike to have seen a man dumping its parts into the river several days before. A man similar in appearance, coincidentally, to Ronald Light. Surprise, surprise. Police were able to connect a name with the serial number on the bike for its owner, Ronald Light, 34 years old, though Light claimed first that the bike was not his. Then he changed his story, of course, claiming it had been his, but that he sold it to, of course, an anonymous buyer. How convenient for you, Light. Ronald was previously a soldier, served in World War I, possibly dishonorably discharged. I've read conflicting statements on that. And he had been a teacher. He held numerous jobs and was dismissed from a number of them, attributed to his inappropriate behavior. Light got fired from a job for lighting a cupboard on fire and drawing lewd graffiti in the bathroom. How juvenile. Hence he was considered a bit of a pyromaniac. He lit a haystack on fire, as well as an office. He was fired from jobs working railroad and farmhand, again due to bad behavior. So, in general, he was a very sus individual. Also important to mention, he experienced shell shock from the war, so PTSD. Ronald Light, while in the military, lost his role as second lieutenant after sexually assaulting a French postal worker, July 1916. It's also important to note that he grew up wealthy, he was well off, spoiled. He was kicked out of school as a teenager after he was caught assaulting a young lady. Something it seems he had a habit of doing. He was offered a commission in the army, which is how he became second lieutenant of the Royal Engineers. Money, money, money. There were also implications by some that he may have played a role in his father's demise rather than him having committed suicide, though this is mostly speculation at best. His father died falling from a balcony, his death documented as accidental. Though many at the time thought he killed himself, or was killed in a way to look like an accident. Some believed he killed himself in response to his son's failure, which seems a bit excessive to me, but you never know. Light was court-martialed for forging documents in 1917. Some sources say he was eventually medically discharged, others say dishonorably. So the green bike had been obtained by Light in 1910, the deluxe model, a pea green as opposed to your basic black bicycle. By March 4th, 1920, they had Light under arrest. They marched into the school he was teaching at in Cheltenham and apprehended him. They also found he matched up with the description of the man reportedly seen with Annie Bella. Light himself admits to helping the lady with her bike and riding with her to her uncle's home. On March 19th, an army-issue gun holster along with bullets were found in a local canal. They matched the bullet which had killed Bella. The trial took place 9th of July, 1920 at Lake Gloucester Castle. The prosecution claimed Light advances upon Bella, who attempted to flee. That Light became angry, knocked her to the ground, and shot her in the face. They believe he smuggled his weapon while serving in the armed forces. A shot from close range would make sense given how nearby the bullet shell was uncovered. It's important to keep in mind the time period, the influence of race and class on legal proceedings. He was wealthy, came from a wealthy family, upper class, whereas Bella was not wealthy and had taken a job at a rubber tire factory. So she was referred to as a factory girl, often in the trial and in the papers reporting it. So the great defender, Light hired a tough lawyer known as the Great Defender, Sir Edward Marshall Hall. Despite Light openly admitting to owning the gun, the holster, and the bike, and being with her the day she was last seen, Hall was able to leave room for doubt. Hall claimed the firing of the gun could have come from a greater distance, not close range, as the prosecution was arguing in their narrative of the events, that a close shot would have been different as far as injuries to Bella, claiming there was limited motive for him to commit the crime. An upstanding, well-mannered, aristocratic, wealthy gentleman would never have sought the attention of a poor woman, a lowly former maid and factory worker. Never mind the racial aspect here, which is probably implied. As someone who worked as an officer, teacher, and an engineer, as a man, his privilege in essence protected him from the repercussions of his own actions. Hall saw a lack of motive supported in this case, his lawyer anyways, especially since there was no assault or robbery involved. But I also wonder, did they actually look for an assault? Then he sort of focuses on this theory of a stranger in the shadows who actually committed the crimes, and on his client. He honed in on this lack of witness, placing Light at the scene at the time of the crime. His history of sexual assault was never addressed during trial. The girl that had claimed Light had bothered them, the girls that had claimed that Light had bothered them, were asked to identify him almost a year later when their memories had faded. Could their testimony really be trusted? So gun expert testimony stated that the injury could have occurred from long range. That was what most benefited Light's case, having had the revolver spirited away in safekeeping to a friend. This was evidence they did not have at hand to definitively prove both were his. They had his signature on the receipt for the bike. People identified him. He himself admitted to interacting with her. He even admitted to tossing the gun holster into the canal. So there was a lot of evidence against him that was disregarded. Despite all this, June 12th, 1920, he was acquitted of all charges, of course. He moved away, changed his name, married himself a widow, and died at 89 in the year of 1975. It was also noted that Light confessed to the murder to someone privately around the time of his trial. I did shoot the girl, but it was completely accidental. We were riding along quietly. I had my revolver in my raincoat pocket, and we dismounted for her to look at it. I had no idea there was a loaded cartridge in it. Her hand was out to take it when it went off. She fell and never stirred. I was frightened and altogether unnerved, and I got on my bicycle and rode away. H.R. Wakefield while another individual, Wendy E's publication, argues the opposite. So there are people who support both arguments, I guess. Don't know how, but I digress. For the sake of playing devil's advocate here, I'm going to share a theory proposed by some. And I'm just going to say, this is despite my disagreeing with it wholeheartedly. Take it as you will. So this is the Crow Theory. Strand magazine published an article on the Crow Theory in 1922. A theory which supports the jury's ruling that Light was innocent. It supports the idea that the death was accidental. The Crow Theory was expounded in the years following Light's acquittal by H. Truman Wright in a self-congratulatory piece entitled Red Claw of the Carrion Crow, written in 1943. Stuart Martin reveals the theory and solves the case, revisits the theory and solves the case. Ronald Light was not found guilty in his trial. He deserved that verdict. He may have been foolish, but he was no murderer. The prosecution could not produce a motive. I can, obviously. The bullet might have been fired from a service revolver, but it might also have been fired from a rifle. Suppose somebody was out rabbit shooting or bird shooting on the white gate a big crow rested. A sitting bird from far across the field, the man with the rifle fired. The bullet went right through the crow and struck Bella Wright, who was cycling past at that moment. Proof of all of this would have been available if P.C. Hall, amateur Sherlock Holmes, had lifted the dead bird and taken it for examination. Very good of P.C. Hall then found the bullet. Very good, but not quite Sherlock Holmes. So, that is the end of this case.